The views and opinions of this broadcast do not reflect the views and opinions of Armed Media, UNU Productions and its affiliates. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to 2A Talk. I'd like to start off by saying thank you for your service, our veterans, men and women in uniform, serving here at home and abroad. My name is Rod, and it is an honor to introduce a few special guests tonight. First, I'd like to introduce Jimmy and Paul from Pod Talk. Jimmy and Paul, how you doing?
Good, thank you. Nice to be here with you guys. It's great to be here.
Yeah, and also a singer, songwriter, and friend, Jordan, from Canada. Jordan, how you doing?
Good, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
Hey, get the name James Jordan.
Yes, sir. That's my artist name. I think I don't know. I've changed it over the course of the years. So, how I got it was, I was just having a lot of bad luck. So, at the time it fit, and I kind of felt like I had another story to tell. Whether I had my own bad luck or I was somebody else's, I think that it would kind of fit the part because, in the being in a hip hop situation, you got to kind of be a little more selfish in the spots and how you're going to take it. It's almost every man for himself. So, bad luck can come in many different forms. So,
I can relate to that. I'm the 13th sibling in my family. And out of everybody, I'm the only one that's ever been arrested, never mind did time.
Yeah, I was the same way.
Number 13.
Well, hey, I asked Jordan on the show today because, being from Canada, I wanted to get his perspective on a few things with regards to firearm and the laws and the differences between United States and Canada. I was reading an article. It says firearm-related violence in Canada has gone up 42%. And the Prime Minister announced that it's kind of an old article because he was reelected, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, you know what? Every time you see when they restrict gun ownership, you see an increase in crime. It's not the fact that it makes it safer; it makes it harder because good people that own guns stop bad people that own guns.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, all your places, like in Texas, like you said, they have a high gun availability for the whole public. So the more people that got guns, the less crime there is, because they're not going to go around sticking a gun in somebody's face that could be carrying one.
Exactly, Jim.
Yeah. So Jordan, so he said he would strengthen gun control. What is it like in Canada to own and possess a firearm? Is it pretty easy or is it very difficult?
No, it's difficult. It's not like getting a driver's license or anything like that. Even that is a 3-step process here. I think there's a little bit too much control, as in I would have to have a special. I don't even know if I could have a special certification or not, depending whether I was military or in the police. There's really no CWP courses here because it's illegal to do so. And owning a gun in your home, it has to be cased and deassembled, and there's no home protection. So I think they've really, minimalized, even being able to do so. And that's why there's more violence, because it's basically, we have nothing to defend ourselves against the people that are being intruders into our home because it's illegal to do so.
Well, what about people who want to hunt or collect? Do they have different classes of firearms?
Yeah, there's different classes of firearms. But I believe it also just stays to like your standard like 30-06 and like certain sniper rifles and things like that. Like there's no, I don't know how to say it. If you want to get like a special license, you'd have to be, in the military or a police officer. I mean, hunting's a little different story, but there's a limit to what you can have as far as like how big a gun.
So, can you own a shotgun?
Yeah, you can own a shotgun.
And do you have to register them, or is there like something or is that vary from location to location?
I think you have to register them. I mean, if they're already like pre-possession, I think like given down from family member or whatever, I don't think in that suit that it would be. But yeah, I mean, if you're a farmer, you pick it up somewhere. I mean, the moment that you pick it up behind the shelf is the minute that you have to like register it and give your name and address and like almost thumbprint,
Wow, and so you need a license though. Also, it's not a right that Canadians are afforded. Is that correct?
No, that's correct. Yeah, it's not a right. Oh, sorry, I don't know if you heard me. I said, yeah, that's right.
Oh, gotcha. So, the article I was reading, it says that the gun violence is going up 42%. Where are these guns coming from? And the reason I say that is because if they're so restricted by the government, right? I mean, if all you can own is a rifle and a shotgun, semi-automatic pistols, rifles, and whatnot are banned. What is the cause of increased gun violence?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we're letting a lot of things, a lot of people, a lot of refugees. I'm not saying that it's just people of color that are raising the violence by any means. I mean, but where there's, I don't know, there's almost less restrictions on who can come into our country than there is to be able to protect our own. And I think that's where we're falling short by the wayside, is that we don't even know what's happening anymore. We're just focused on what you can see.
Do you know what I actually think? I think the Canadian government doesn't care about their people. Yes, I really do.
Hey, I'm getting information that the show isn't being broadcast. Is that right?
I don't know.
That's right. It is now.
Well, you know what? You have the right to defend yourself. And the Canadian government doesn't care about that. They really don't. They want you dependent. Excuse me again.
Right. I mean,
they want you dependent on a police force that's underfunded and
in some areas here, there isn't even a police station because there's not enough crime in that city to hold one.
So you got to be a bad city to get a cop?
Almost. I mean, there has to be enough regular crime for there to be a
sounds
police
like, to me, the slums is the most cop-infested place.
Always. Always. And I mean, it's without a doubt. There's no actual plan here. People are just running things, They're like maintaining because,
yeah, but you people don't complain about profiling. And you know what I mean? When you got black police officers arresting black kids, I don't get this profiling.
Good point, Jimmy.
No, that's true.
Good point. Right.
Let's be honest, though.
It's
Gun control
crime.
and the war on drugs. It's not a gun issue. It's not a drug issue. It's a control of the people issue. You know what I'm saying?
Right. That's why I said that. I mean, Canada's been too open. We're accepting everything. There's no control here. I mean, there is, but only in a personal aspect, not a country.
Right. So essentially, the government looks at people as humans on a tax farm. They want to make money. That's what politicians do. They re-election so that they can, make their money. And it's crazy. There was a comedian here in the United States. His name is David Chappelle. He said in a interview, or no, it wasn't an interview. It was at the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor at the Kennedy Center. They said, he's talking about not being angry at censorship, but it's not that serious, because as a comedian, the pussification of America has made it to where it's uncouth to make jokes about anything. But his point was that the First Amendment is first for a reason, and the Second Amendment is just in case the first one doesn't work out. What do y'all think of that?
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
That's why they made it the second, so you can enforce the first.
That's right.
That's true. And I mean, I don't know. That's why I like the States a lot better than Canada. I mean, that even in Canada, when you go into a nightclub or a bar where requires bouncers and things like that, that you immediately lose all your rights being in there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that's also another way that we're left defenseless too. I can't even defend myself if I need to in a public place. Basically, is what they're saying. How do you? And
so they're trying to tell you don't stop the bad guy.
Basically, I mean, it's at the bouncer's decision to decide on what needs to be necessary. And there's been people, even friends of mine, man, that have been thrown downstairs or thrown out of clubs or things like that for literally not even doing anything, man. And it's just because maybe somebody's brother of a friend doesn't like them, but we can't defend ourselves in a club or anything like that. We immediately lose all our rights, and it's at their jurisdiction to plea how they deal with us.
Wow.
Well, that's what it is. That's when social fucking justice comes and kills you.
Well, yeah. I mean, they've crossed so many lines, but there's not enough, I don't think, of us that would, because that's why about the States. I mean, they people band together, and it's more of a unity, man. I mean, people stand up for their rights, and here we're just hear it on the news, and then it's accepted. I don't get it.
You know what I don't get is why people don't understand a joke is a joke. It's a joke. When I say shit, and I say stuff all the time, right? It's a joke. Enough. I don't need people picking it apart.
Yeah.
Right. And, before too long, it'll be a crime to have thoughts that aren't, of the community standards or something like that. And I'm still waiting for a few Facebook bans.
I mean, I think honestly, he has a good point that you said that it's a crime not to even think the way that other people do. And I believe that it already is. I mean, look at how many other situations there's been somebody that's maybe doesn't understand or has a mental issue multiple times in airports. You know what I mean? There's people that are dying because they don't even think like the public. And there's no consideration to that at all anymore, I don't think.
Yeah, so in the United States, I think I read somewhere once, I don't remember the exact numbers, but it says that the United States has more imprisoned citizens than any other country in the world.
Well,
I don't know if that was per capita.
Them for every felony, and everything is a felony.
I don't think that. I think it's just because more people are coming across a border that's unsecured, right? And they think they can do whatever they want to do because they already committed a crime by crossing the border. And then they're thinking they can do anything they want.
So, Jordan, what are some of the punishments for possessing a firearm that's banned in Canada? Are you aware, or do you know of anybody that has done time?
I don't know anybody that has actually. No, I don't know anybody that has done time, but I believe the time sentence for owning a firearm is, I believe you can get anywhere from well, depending if you have any priors or anything like that, right? I think that's what the time would be based off. But for the most part, I think it would be anywhere from at least a year or more.
What guns do you ban?
Everything, Jim.
Yeah, but pretty much everything except for rifles, like hunting rifles, bolt-action rifles, and shotguns. I think all semi-automatic handguns and AR type rifles, those are definitely banned.
I have the exact amount of time for possessing a firearm. So it says the maximum.
So the story is, good people get pissed, get in trouble for owning guns that people expect to do hard time with. That's fine. That's fine. Okay, Jim.
Okay, no. So what I was saying is that it says the maximum penalty for even pointing another firearm at another person carries a maximum sentence from 5 years, anywhere from 6 months to 5 years, with a $5,000 fine.
So if you're defending your house and somebody's breaking in, right, hypothetically, and you bear your rifle or your shotgun that you have a license for illegally, you can still get a 6-month sentence at the least. Am I understanding that right?
I'm just looking that up right now. 1 second.
And I can understand having laws that are should be common sense. I guess you can't really legislate. You shouldn't be pointing a firearm at anybody unless you intend to use it on them. So I remember hearing a story about a man in Canada that successfully defended his house with his firearm and ended up doing time for I don't know if it's manslaughter, murder, or what. I have to look up the article, but. Yeah, but I think that's the problem that the United States is trying to get to there with all of these liberal politicians who are all about grabbing people's guns. And what was Beto? He said, "Yeah, I'm going to confiscate your guns." Yeah, good luck with that, dude. But what are you going to do in its place? How are you going to defend the people? They can't even keep drugs out of prison. How are they going to keep criminals out of my house?
Yeah, that's true. There's nobody that's checking on you at night. So I mean, they kind of just leave you out there in the sticks. Did you catch what I said?
Yeah. I got it. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah. So what experience do you have with firearms, Jordan?
Or are you're asking me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. As far as my experience with firearms, I mean, I've never been in the military. I've never, been in anything like that. Mostly just like as far as like country, uncles, aunties, friends, parents, stuff like that own guns. I mean, that's how I got the chance. Went grouse hunting, stuff like that.
So what are they, mostly shotguns?
I mean, you got like your 22s, shotguns and things like that.
Yeah. So the article I was talking about on January 4th in Weyburn, Saskatchewan, Canada, 23-year-old man was charged with second-degree murder for shooting and killing a home invader.
Right. Second degree. What's that in Canada?
Well, second degree is I believe it's premeditated, right? Maybe it's a step down from premeditated.
Right, that's what it would be, because murder one is premeditated. Well, at least in the States.
Yeah, and the 23-year-old man, he used a .22 caliber rifle and fired several shots at the masked man. Now, that sounds like a rifle that you could own legally, right? I mean, you use .22 to hunt squirrels or some kind of rodent.
Right. I mean, I believe you would be able to own it legally, but you'd still have to, register it and everything like that stuff to be in the case.
Yeah, and
go ahead, sir.
Oh, yeah. It said that the home invaders were armed. According to this victim in this case, the man that's been charged with murder. They broke into his home and he was forced to shoot him. And about 15 minutes later, the police received a call stating that two patients had suffered various stab wounds and a gunshot wound. So police had arrived, I guess, but I think in the United States, the average wait time for law enforcement to arrive is, I think, 12 to 15 minutes after you call 911 if somebody's trying to break into your house. A lot can happen in that 15 minutes, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, all right, yeah, I'm still reading the article as I go. The weapon that the home invaders had were knives. So, the only people you're affecting by enforcing strict gun control are the people that abide by the law, the people who are going to follow the rules. Criminals don't care about the law.
I know. And I think that's where things are going wrong, because it's really us against them at the end of the day, and that's every scenario anywhere you go. I mean, everybody likes to feel protected. I mean, it's legal around here to carry like a 6-inch blade on you, so I mean, I doubt that those people that were trying to intrude the home even got charged for the weapons that they had.
What would happen in the United States if somebody was charged with murder for defending themselves? What do y'all think?
En masse?
Yeah, do you think it happens, or is it possible it could happen?
Unless you shoot a cop, you're getting life without parole.
Wait, unless you shoot a cop? So if you shoot a cop, you don't get life without parole, or?
Yeah, they have a death penalty.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
That's Mass. I don't know. I live in New Hampshire, and I don't remember what New Hampshire has. I don't. I never did learn it.
Yeah. I know South Carolina has a castle doctrine, essentially meaning that you don't have to retreat. If you're in your own home and somebody is threatening your life or your family, right? But I think if you break into a house during the daytime, it's a misdemeanor. If you do it at night, it's a felony. And the reason for that is because most people are home at night, right? So, but the castle doctrine basically says, they come into your property, you can shoot them. Florida is a little different. I lived there for a few months briefly, last year or a few years ago, and they have a stand your ground law. So you don't even have to be in your home necessarily. If somebody threatens your life with great bodily harm, kidnapping, basically any felony, you can defend yourself with your firearm.
Yeah, and I think that's the way it should be.
And a lot of people, I think, agree, but it's the media has taken to this narrative that guns are bad and that they should all be banned. Because when's the last time you saw a story on the news about somebody successfully defending themselves with their firearm? But if somebody, there was a shooting near a school, it's all over the place.
Of course, because everybody loves kids, not violence.
Well, yeah. I don't know about everybody loves kids, but
you know what I mean in a sense, though. I mean, if you saw a little kid getting hurt in front of you, you know what I mean. You probably wouldn't look away from it more so as if you saw someone getting into a fight.
Right, and I think that as responsible gun owners, kids shouldn't have firearms at all. And if more people are armed, then they can stop those people that would want to harm children or be irresponsible. I think it all comes down to accountability. If you hold people accountable for if you don't have your firearms stored safely in a place where any unauthorized user can't get to it, then that's shame on you. You should be held accountable and responsible for the damage that somebody, that unauthorized user, may or may not do.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah, I disagree. I'm not going to take the blame for somebody else pulling the trigger.
Right, but if and I think that's one of those things where due process is so important. If the charge is for let's say not keeping your firearm secured from a kid, and that kid ends up hurting the sibling or somebody else. I mean, it's going to be probably the worst thing ever that happened in somebody's life. I mean, that scares me. I'm afraid that my firearms could be used to hurt a kid, and that's I think that's just being a responsible firearm owner. And again, I said earlier, you can't legislate stupidity away, but I think that holding people accountable for their actions is important. I don't know.
Right.
But why make guns illegal? And hold the criminal accountable for their crimes and
the person, exactly.
Yeah, it's not. You can't just group one person and call it a bad bunch.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I don't know. I mean, at least you guys are still able to, apply for your CWP and things like that. I mean, and gun legislation in Canada, I mean, is largely like about just licensing, registration of firearms, and even including air guns with a muzzle velocity of more than 500 feet per second. I mean, and like handgun registration became a law here in 1934.
That's wild. People probably don't even remember a time when, you know, everybody could own and possess firearms freely, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that concerns me. You know, I mean, we talked earlier about, you know, the demasculinization of a society or of a country. The point being that you know, the NRA was founded after the Civil War because there weren't enough people who knew or, you know, enough about firearms. Their job was to teach. Now they have their lobby wing, but also it's still very important to the Second Amendment that people learn be responsible firearm owners.
Agreed. I 100% agree with that.
So yeah, I was reading an article that Parker County in Texas just declared their county in Texas a Second Amendment sanctuary county. Goes on to say that you know, they will not enforce any unconstitutional firearm restrictions against any citizen. I think that's great, and I think I wish more people were willing to take that stand, you know, and basically tell the federal government, yeah, we're not gonna strip people's rights because you want to get more votes, right?
Yeah, and they're breaching the Second Amendment. That's correct.
Yeah, and the Second Amendment is there to restrict the government. The Second Amendment doesn't necessarily give citizens rights. Our rights are given by our Creator, right? You know, we were born with these rights, and the government, the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, basically say what the government can't do, and defends those rights.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a safety net for the country because, I mean, I'm sure at one point there's a thought that everybody wanted, or one person wanted to control everybody. And I mean, that's kind of what separates that. So you're able to defend yourself. And I think that's the point at the end of the day. I mean, why would you leave yourself helpless? I mean, everybody wants you to be able to defend yourself, but, you know, only to a certain point, or you're restricted.
Right, and when why give the government so much authority and power? You know, like people say, the Second Amendment should only applies to the firearms that they had at the time. You know, like basically muskets and whatnot. But that's not the case. I don't think, because the First Amendment that protects religion and freedom of speech, you know, they had no idea the technology that was going to happen with the advent of like the telephone and the telegram, even, you know, like information is now broadcast worldwide, like this broadcast. You know, you can be anywhere and hear our ideas, our thoughts, and that's the kind of the purpose of the show. You know, I think it's important. It's not something to scare people, but it is a scary thought to know that the government wants to take your rights. That, you know, like, I think the United States will be like Canada if more people don't stand up to defend our rights. You know, and they're not going to take your rights overnight. They're not going to take your guns. You know, well, I didn't think they were going to, you know, come in the middle of the night and take your guns.
One felon at a time, one medicated person at a time.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, with the legalization of marijuana, if you fill out a form to buy a firearm and you're taking medically prescribed marijuana, it's against the law for them to sell you that firearm. They will deny you that right.
Maybe that's why they're so strict here, because I can go to the dispensary and just show my ID and walk in. There's no form necessary.
Yeah, and absolutely true. You know, and if I mean, I understand like people who aren't mentally, if they're adjudicated mentally unfit to own a firearm. Yeah, I get that. The problem is that 99% of the people on that list are veterans. So veterans who have, basically gave a blank check to the United States government, up to and including their life to defend the freedoms of our country. They're basically being told no, they can't own a firearm. They're being deprived of their rights that they fought for because maybe they suffer from PTSD or I don't know what other mental issues would somebody from owning a firearm firsthand. But I know that when I go to the VA, I'm very, very careful about what I say.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, I think as far as like gun control goes, I was reading this article and it said the controls on civilian use of firearms date from the early days of Confederation, even in Canada, when justice of the peace could impose penalty of carrying a handgun without reasonable cause. And at that point, reasonable cause would then again, going back to my point B, being a police officer, being in the military.
Right. So if you work for the government, you get certain privileges and rights, and that is the definition of tyranny. When the government has exception from the law that governs the citizens. So I think as Americans, we need to wake up and see that these red flag laws and more gun control are forms of tyranny that people fought wars over.
Exactly. No, I agree 100% with that.
Criminals are going to find ways to get firearms, and I asked you that question earlier about, where the gun's coming from in Canada. Not really expecting you to have the answer, but if you put them on the black market, it increases the value of them. I mean, I guess that's the only benefit to having huge restrictions on firearms. I'd be a millionaire, maybe.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, as far as guns coming into, Canada, I mean, we also do have international organizations too. I mean, crime, like you said, is major. There's always when there's a will, there's a way, per se. So, I mean, we're never, I don't think, going to have a lid on that at all. Not to mention, even if we did, the banks, are the biggest contributor to the guns and things like that. I mean, and I don't think that guns are a bad thing. It's the bad person behind the gun,
Right. The gun is a tool that it can be used for good. It can be used for bad, just like a knife, a hammer, a baseball bat.
Oh, exactly. Like, so what? Somebody gets hurt with a fork, then what? I mean.
Yeah, ban forks, right?
Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense at this point. It's like anything that they can make a big enough story about and gets attention persuades the decision for whatever reason based on what Twitter and social media, and the common thing now is to talk negative. So people are taking negative comments, basically, right, and substituting it for justice, making a decision that affects everybody at the end of the day.
True.
Social media is the biggest outlet in the world. People, like you never remember dial-up internet. We never had access to the world like we had now. Like the only link that you would have was because you knew somebody else. There wasn't even like the common friends thing like there's on Facebook. I mean, Donald Trump, for instance, uses Twitter. I mean, can get up to the public a million times faster than holding a conference. I mean, it's the day and age of when something is viral. It is now, people attention has switched and they don't pay attention to what's really going on. It's like the sleight of hand.
Yeah, I grew up I remember being, pretty young when Ronald Reagan was president, and he would be on every single channel that my shows would be on. And I was just thinking, I was like, oh man, I wish this guy would shut up. And social media has made it, you can get it on demand. Like the fact that President Trump uses Twitter gives people access to the president that they never had before. Every thought that he may have is regardless of what you think about him, is it's available right there instantly, and you don't have to be sitting in front of a television trying to watch your show being aggravated that he's trying to say something. You can get it, and people talk about that. I don't remember him talking about, I didn't really watch the news as a kid, but I don't remember him talking about what Reagan was doing on the TV last night, because you probably saw it, right?
Right. I mean, I don't have anything else to say, but I agree with you on that.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head that social media is I think it's the avenue that people who are trying to make a stand for their rights, and the problem is it's becoming more difficult for conservatives anyway to use social media. Like if you try to publicly sell a firearm, or even reloading parts, like tools for reloading, you get flagged by Facebook for not meeting community standards because of the firearm restrictions. And I get it, you don't want kids being able to buy firearms on Facebook, but they sell cars on there. Cars kill way more people every year than a firearm. So
right, exactly. I mean, like I was saying, it's all in what it looks like, not at what it actually is. I mean, people that are involved, in the same industry that you are, I wouldn't even say industry, but same organization, things like that. Gun owners, right? I mean, there's only two sides of the fence. You either are one or you're not one. There's not like I own it sometimes,
Yeah, well said. Well put. Yeah.
So there's only ever going to be two sides of the fence, and the people that are being persuaded that have put, that have had to protect themselves. I mean, that's the only other side, and yeah, and then there's everybody that gets hurt by it, and unfortunately, seeing something sad, it trends more than seeing somebody who made it out of a lot. And it's a weird concept. It's like we're more fascinated by depth than growth, and we're misguided by perception from media, and that's why I think social media is a bigger outlet than everybody really believes, because that's what's swaying decisions, and it's insane.
Right. And speaking of social media, on one of my feeds, I saw this. I can't remember the name of it. It's basically a gunslinging robot by Bosstown Dynamics. It's the robot can walk, and they've got it designed. They've got it designed to shoot targets, and they knock it down, and it gets back up, and it's it's very Terminator-esque, in my opinion. But
that's interesting that you mentioned that, because I was actually reading an article, and this is something that happened in 2009, I believe, at a Chinese distribution company. They built the same thing. They were working on robots, and one of them actually ended up killing 23 people inside. Like it literally, it went rogue. And I mean, because that's the way of the future now, though. Technology, right? It's all on how advanced and the next edge that you have. I mean, they already have robots as weathermen in China. I mean, and it's that era is not too far away. I mean, people think the development is off because they show like the beginnings, but I mean, who's to say that a post is recent and not from 5 years ago? That's just the first time you've seen it.
Yeah. Well, I just did some more research, and it's actually a fake video. So I guess that's also the danger of using social media as a reliable news source.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's fake news. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it looked real enough to me. And I found it entertaining and disconcerting. But yeah, I guess it's I guess any outlet can be used as fake news, right?
Well, I guess so. You just need to put up a green screen and get a good camera and an editing program.
Right.
Because that's what's used in movies, even, you know what I mean? Who knows anymore? I mean, look at magicians, right? Like, it's right in front of your face and you don't even realize what's going on, right? You don't know. And that's, I think, kind of the same kind of idea as what they're doing. It's almost, like I said, the sleight of hand.
Right. Right. So, I'm reading another article right now about Senator Feinstein saying that the AR-15 is a military weapon. Interestingly enough, though, there's no militaries in the world that use civilian AR-15s. So she's confusing the AR-15 with the M16 or the M4. Those are select fire, meaning that you can get more than one bullet for every pull of the trigger, right? So if you put it in burst, pull the trigger once, and you get 3-round burst, bang, bang, bang. That's what makes them military type weapons. But again, it goes back to, I want a select fire. I want a fully automatic machine gun because, the government has one.
Right, exactly. Why should you be limited? They're out in the public just as much as you are, and they're citizens as well. So there shouldn't be special class to be able to defend yourself. I mean, you shouldn't have to be, lower in a grade. I agree with you.
Yeah, and the idea to defend yourself could also be against the very people that you would call if you needed, somebody to help. And I've noticed that across the United States, there's a huge militarization of our police forces. MRAPs, Humvees, actual military vehicles, surplus, I guess, are being bought by these SWAT teams or what have you to conduct military style raids on suspected criminals that may or may not be criminals. I don't know. What does the law enforcement in big cities in Canada look like?
Yeah, no, I agree. Very militarized. Even in my own, I live in one of the drug capitals of Canada, and I mean, lots you'll see military vehicles that are used as police vehicles for even raids. I mean, there was like a tank and fully armored up policemen with a 20-foot truck, a communications van, and things like that. I mean, I think, that's getting kind of excessive, but, I don't think we have martial law here. But I mean, I don't think even if we don't, I don't think that's too far away. I mean, they've already minimalized our protection in our home. Things like that. I mean, there's, since it says the 1840s. So, I mean, I don't know. There's been a plan always. It's just, we don't have a say.
Right.
There's nothing backing us up like a Second Amendment or anything like that. And I don't know. I mean, that's how we're getting overruled. There's nothing that's backing us up because there's no previous law stating that they can. Right,
and the United States has people that like Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, Beto O'Rourke, Kamala Harris, and Cory Booker, among others that are calling for reform. And what they're trying to do is convince Americans to go along with their injustice. They intend to inflict on law-abiding citizens, as I said before. So we have this sense that when anti-Second Amendment extremists call for reform, it's really about stripping away our rights and controlling the people, and making us more powerless against a tyrannical government. I don't know what law enforcement officers would. They're following orders, right? They're not thinking about, hey, I'm about to go take this person's freedoms away from them. They're just like, hey, yeah, we've got a job to do. We're going to go in and we're going to grab this person. And I've heard of these raids essentially that happen with these SWAT teams with military style weapons, and they're
I'm sorry, you cut out there on the last part.
Yeah, so the military style raids, you can't defend against that. If a law enforcement officer was told to, hey, take this person's firearms because we think they might be a threat, they're not going to think twice. They're going to be like, okay, they're going to follow orders. So how do we, as law-abiding citizens, defend against that, without becoming a criminal?
Yeah, I don't think that there is a way to do that. I think immediately, you're valued as you're crazy or something of that aspect, like mental evaluations, and then there's, due process like that. There's nothing that I think that they're trying to make you able to do because they're supposed to be the right ones, like that's, I guess, essentially the way that they wanted to portray.
Yeah, and they if law enforcement pulls you over, they can usually conduct a traffic stop in about 20 minutes. And what they're doing in that 20 minutes is checking for warrants and making sure that you're not in the system, the National Instant Check System, NICS, to make sure you don't have like felonies or, you're not a fugitive from justice.
Even if you were, does that take away your rights just because you're a fugitive of justice? There's, what I mean? There's many of people that have probably been a fugitive that didn't plan on being one.
Right, and what happens whenever lawful, law-abiding citizens become criminals because they're exercising their rights? I've heard the stories in New York where they have these things where you have to register your firearms, even if they're inherited. A man used a firearm to defend himself. Somebody was breaking into his house to steal stuff, and he shot the woman. It was a woman and her son that were doing the crime, and he shot himself, or he shot the woman, and he was charged with not having a registered firearm, and the district attorney said that, he invited it on himself because he was hoarding stuff. He had too much stuff, and that's why they were trying to break into his house to rob him.
Yeah, that's kind of a low blow. I think in many instances there's just people that are tired and exhausted and shouldn't be in the position that they currently hold. They need to leave, or there's no incentive anymore. It's played out. I think just as much as there's a new president and things like that every certain term, there also should be somebody else in those positions as well. I mean, I think rotation is also key to having new insight and keeping things sustained.
Right, so let's run for office. What do you say? Are you going to announce it right here on 2A Talk?
If you run for office, I will be right behind you.
All right. All right, sports fans. So look us up on Facebook, 2A Talk. leave a review. Let us know what you think. If there's any topics you'd like to discuss. Thanks, Jimmy and Paul, Jordan, for coming on the show tonight. I'd like to thank all of our service members, men and women in uniform, both serving at home and abroad. And I look forward to hearing what you have to say. Anybody got any last closing thoughts?
Yeah, we got about 2.5 minutes. So, you can thank the troops again.
Yeah, thanks to the troops.
Yeah, and thank you to everybody that supports our local military. And thank you for having me on the show as well. Always a pleasure. So.
Yeah. Thanks for being on the show. I know it's probably about dinner time for you there in BC, right?
Yeah, just at 6:00.
Yeah, 2 minutes too.
Well, I haven't the slightest idea how to
anything you just want to plug or anything? Anything you got bad to say about Daniel?
Oh yeah. He's a total slacker. He's in Kentucky tonight. He said he's got work to do, but who works at 8:00 at night? And not him. He used to be one of my troops. I was his company commander, and he will work twice as hard to be lazy than it would have been just to do the job in the first place. I'm not criticizing. I'm just describing how he works. I hope he's at least listening.
Yeah, I hope so too. So, hi.
All right, guys, you can say good night.
All right, good night from 2A Talk.
All right, I'm out.